As I mentioned, municipal solid waste could be burned as well. We are using a lot of producing a lot of solid waste. At this time, the solid waste is mostly being dropped in the landfill, but instead of dropping in the landfill, we can burn them in the specially designed furnaces and produce power. We can see from the charts at the right that the amount of the waste that produced by us is increasing every year. From 1960s up to today, the total waste produced is 2.9 folds, about 3 times as much waste we produce in the US today than we were using in the 50 years ago, or less than 50 years ago in 1960s. And per capita, some of it is because of the population increase, and some of them is because of our energy use habits. Most of the trash we use, such as packaging, paint, yard waste, bottles, etc., they involved in our trash, and some of them are bio source and some of them are not. These are some statistics which is being given by the EPA in the 2015. It's very new. On total, 254 million tons of municipal waste was produced in 2015, three times increase since 1960s. On the average, every person is producing 2 kilograms of waste every day. The waste that we produce, the garbage, about 3/4 of that is biodegradable, and that can be considered to be biomass. Out of this waste, about majority of this is buried in landfill, but only 15% can be incinerated, based on recycled or reused. This is a typical American garbage mix. Why we say American? Because American habits are different from the other countries, and this mix is very different, for example, in Europe or in the developing countries. As you can see from this diagram, 28.5% are papers, paperboard, cardboard. Another 14% is the food waste. 13% is the yard trimming, and this total is about 55%, 56% of this is directly biomass. There are other things that can be considered as biomass: rubber, leather, textiles. The source of those are also trees. The wood can be considered as biomass. Here I put a different category because most of the wood that we throw in the garbage, they're processed wood. They have varnishes, they have paint, nails, and when you burn this stuff, they produce a lot of toxic material. So for that reason, many people do not consider these. Same thing with the tires, and lastly, in the tires in the cars, a lot of mercury and other toxic metals. So we don't consider that as a biomass because we cannot really burn it safely. But at least you can see that majority of the garbage can be burned. The part that cannot be burned, in addition to the wood and rubbers and leathers, are the metals, about 9%, plastics 12%, and glass about 5%, which we are dumping it in different container, and those are considered not to be biomass, and they have to be recycled and reused. The process of burning garbage is very similar to the process of burning the coal. Basically, you take the trash, you clean it up somewhat, and then you pass it through some kind of conveyor belt into a furnace, and then you burn it. Again, you clean it. The heat is used to turn a turbine, which runs a generator and produces electricity. On the average, about 20 to 30 gigawatt of power is expected, to be produced by 2020. Right now, it's about 12 to 15 gigawatt that we use through this process. In addition to a traditional power plant, we can also use the combined heat and power units, which the waste heat from the gas turbine can be used to drive a secondary steam turbine, and more of the fuel is converted to electricity. If the waste is hot enough, then we can directly use it for space heating rather than throw it into the atmosphere, or we can use it, to heat water and use the steam for the industrial process. These are all called cogeneration, and which is becoming more common in the US. The biogas, which is also called swamp gas, landfill gas, digester gas, as the name implies, is a gas which is emitted when you from the waste. If you leave it alone, or we can accelerate it by burning them through a digester and causing this material to turn into a gas. The gas is usually a methane, carbon dioxide mixture, and in the bottom of the swamps, marshes, landfills, they are naturally produced, or they can be fermented and used in the particular fermentation containers. The animal manure can also be turned into the biogas, and that would be another source of the fuel that can be piped to the houses and used instead of the natural gas. The main concern about the biofuel is that biofuel is renewable, but they're not clean. When you burn it, you produce again same material that you use when you burn fossil fuel, namely carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, nitric oxide. All of them are being produced again. The only difference is that carbon dioxide that it produces is replacing the carbon dioxide taken away from the ambient, and to produce the biomass. So in this case, biomass is not a greenhouse, does not contribute to the greenhouse, but all the other pollutions are still exist there. Things like the sewage, sludges, like that we dump into the garbage, like the household chemicals, they have a lot of nasty stuff that cannot be burnt, and if you burn, then they can be a health hazard. Tires are the same way. They contain dioxin, PCBs, toxic metals, mercury, lead, arsenic. So those are not usually burned. And the wood waste also contains, as I mentioned, paints, varnishes, and other processes that have used during the manufacturing them. So these are mainly, by many people, are not suitable for burning. Whether biomass is a net source of carbon or a sink of carbon is being debated by many people. They can either hurt also or help the food supply, depending on what kind of biomass we produce. And there could be also a way, may or may not be effective means of reducing our dependence on the fossil fuels. One of the concerns that recently have been raised is whether burning biomass directly compete with the food production. For example, price of the corn had been steadily increasing in the United States because many farmers produce the corn for the being subsidized, produce the corn for production of bioethanol rather than use this as a food, a staple. So it could be competing with the food, it could be competing with the water resources. It all depends on different countries. In developing countries, there's always a surplus of the food, and so it might not directly impact the food production. However, in the developing countries, which there are not enough food, and if you use this kind of food biomass to produce bioenergy, then that can adversely impact the population, and there will be more food scarcity. The impact on the global warming is different for different type of biomass. You can see that the green bars are the ecological footprint, everything, which includes the carbon footprint. That's the purple bars. It also includes the use of the land, the use of the water resources and everything. So everything put together called ecological footprint. And you can see that the meats, which is not of course a biomass, has a much higher footprint that, let's say, biomass, which again you can see that dairy product, coffee, beans, these are have a higher footprint than things like fruits and rice, etc. Recycling seems to be a sensitive solution to the problem of waste disposal. However, recycling also encourages waste. People feel good about it that they have recycled, so they take all these disposable cups and everything else, use it one time, or these plastic bottles, and they consider it to be recycled, but in a way, they're increasing the waste. It might not be the best way to reduce our waste. The best way to reduce the waste is, number one, to cut the waste, basically, to use the better efficiency and in manufacturing the material, or reusing the product after they run through this life cycle in the other applications. In short, the best way, and I believe the only way to reduce waste, is to create less trash. Thank you.